Drama at PMQs. Nigel Farage speaks for England by walking out.
Is that during Prime Minister's question time, 8 Reform MPs left the Commons chamber after the Reform leader, Nigel Farage, he asked a question and he asked the Prime Minister about smashing the gang.
It is a very serious demonstration of fury on behalf of tens of millions of British people that the Prime Minister will not answer a serious question.
Keir Starmer completely loses control as Nigel Farage abandons Prime Minister's questions in an explosive walkout, throwing Parliament into chaos. The Reform leader slams Starmer's failed immigration policies, questioning his competence as 70,000 migrants flood the UK, while the PM offers nothing but weak excuses. In a brutal display of frustration, Farage and his MPs storm out, sending a clear message: this government's collapse is imminent.
He completely ignored me. He started ranting and raving about reform councils across the country, and in disgust and against parliamentary convention, and I hope you're not ashamed of me, I got up and I walked out. That's how I feel about this man.
Nigel Farage humiliated him in front of the entire nation. It started with a single question. Farage stood up, looked Starmer dead in the eye, and delivered a line. 70,000 migrants crossing illegally, 1,000 in a single week. A border crisis bleeding into a national security nightmare.
Smash the gangs! That is what the Prime Minister promised us. Trust me, I will stop the boats from coming. But 70,000 later, and 1,000 in the last week, and too many young men that pose a threat to national security, is it not time to admit Smash the Gangs has been a total abject failure?
He asked Starmer plainly whether it was time to admit the current strategy had completely collapsed and whether a plan B was now urgently needed. Simple question. Devastating implications. And what did Britain's Prime Minister do? He dodged it like a man running from a fire. He started himself. Starmer's response was a masterclass in political cowardice. Instead of defending his record, he attacked Farage's past.
Mr. Speaker, this is from the man and the party that voted against giving law enforcement counter-terrorism style powers to tackle it. So he wants the grievance, he doesn't want it sorted. And he has absolutely no judgment. He again said, let's join the war, let's all go to war. I want to make it perfectly clear he wants the war. A week later, screeching U-turn, we don't want to go to war. And he says, trust his judgment.
Instead of presenting solutions, he threw up smokescreens about counter-terrorism votes and flip-flopping positions. He mentioned Reform UK's internal contradictions, council tax hikes, policy inconsistencies. Classic deflection. The playbook of a leader who has absolutely nothing of substance to offer on the most pressing issue facing ordinary British people. Voters watching at home didn't need a political analyst to tell them what they were witnessing. They could feel it. Their Prime Minister had just been exposed as someone more interested in political point scoring than protecting the country's borders.
Why have you walked out of the PMQs?
Oh, I mean, we're just furious. It's ridiculous. Nigel asked a very serious question about something of great concern to tens of millions of British citizens about the fact that the smashing the gangs policy for the illegal migrants has completely failed, 70,000 people, and the Prime Minister's us banging on about the war and councils. I mean, there's no dinghies and boats in Staffordshire, for heaven's sake, Prime Minister. They're coming across the English Channel.
This is where it gets explosive. Farage had heard enough. He leaned back, looked across the chamber, and delivered 3 words that will echo through British political history. Absolutely pointless. Then he stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked out. Not alone. His entire Reform UK parliamentary group rose with him and followed. Chair legs scraping, footsteps echoing. The chamber watching in stunned silence as an entire opposition bloc turned their backs on the Prime Minister and left. The message was thunderous without a single additional word being spoken.
Speaker, I see Reform have walked out. They obviously realise they're absolutely snookered.
Back inside, Starmer seized his moment. He scanned the now emptier opposition benches, allowed himself a visible smirk, and delivered his response to the empty seats. I can see Reform have walked out. They've obviously realized they're absolutely snookered. The Labour benches erupted. Cheers, laughter, the kind of theatrical celebration politicians perform when they believe they've won a moment. And on the surface, yes, it looked like a win. Farage was gone. The chamber was his. He could speak without interruption.
It's the second time in a row the Prime Minister has refused to ask a question. The whole point is, the clue's in the name. It's called Prime Minister's Questions. He has to answer our questions, not the other way around. And the Speaker, frankly, needs to sort something out because this is becoming a farce.
But here is what Starmer fundamentally misread in that moment. The people who needed to hear his answer were not sitting in that chamber. They were at home, watching on television, scrolling through social media, sitting in pubs and living rooms across England. And what they saw was not a strong prime minister dismantling a weak opponent. They saw a man mocking the one politician who was actually asking the questions they wanted answered.
Starmer refused to answer the tough question of what he'll do about the continued illegal arrivals, instead changing the subject completely to bash Farage.
Every person who has watched the boats keep coming, who has watched the government announce initiative after initiative that changes nothing, who has watched politicians debate the problem without solving it, watched Starmer laugh and felt their frustration harden into something much more dangerous: contempt.
But the Prime Minister will not answer a serious question about what's his Plan B strategy to stop the boats, because Plan A, smashing the gangs, has just encouraged the gangs. We've got more boats, more illegals coming across than before the general election. His policies utterly failed.
Richard Tice, deputy leader of Reform UK, stepped in front of the cameras almost immediately after the walkout. He was measured, serious, and completely controlled. This was not a stunt, he said. This was a statement, a direct message from millions of British voters who are exhausted by a prime minister who turns up every week to dodge accountability.
Nigel Farage calls out Keir Starmer at PMQs for his failed smash the gangs policy following 1,000 illegals arriving in the last week. He refuses to answer the question and completely changes the subject.
Tice framed the walkout not as a dramatic political gesture, but as an act of solidarity with every working-class voter who has been raising these issues for years and been ignored, patronized, or called names for doing so. Whether you agree with Reform UK's politics or not, that framing landed. It was clean, sharp, and devastatingly effective.
We said we're done with it. Enough's enough. We have to make a statement, and the fact that the press have picked up on it and it is now going viral. This is the main issue that is upsetting tens of millions of British citizens, and the Prime Minister just sort of arrogantly dismissed it and waved it off without so much as a recognition of the importance of the issue.
The polling context around this moment matters enormously. Reform UK is not some fringe protest party anymore. The numbers are real, they are growing, and they are starting to make serious politicians in both Labour and the Conservatives very uncomfortable. Every major political realignment in modern British history started with moments exactly like this one. A dramatic confrontation, a visual spectacle that cuts through the noise, a message that travels faster than any press release. The walkout was already viral before Tice finished his interview. Clips spread across every platform, reaching audiences that never watch PMQs, people who have long since stopped trusting political coverage from traditional media. The moment found them anyway.
Reform don't want to solve problems, they only want to exploit them. I am thankful for the opportunity to change this country for the better. He says he wish he hadn't bothered winning councils, because they're an absolute disgrace.
What makes Farage genuinely dangerous to Starmer is not just the immigration issue, although that remains the blade that cuts deepest. It is the broader picture Farage is painting: a prime minister who stumbles through foreign policy, a government that cannot explain its own energy strategy, a leader whose own party is riddled with factional battles, ministerial embarrassments, and the lingering stench of the Mandelson controversy.
Now, we've got to admit that prime ministers have always tried to dodge questions at Prime Minister's Question Time, and you're not responsible for the answers they give. But what we have seen in recent weeks is not just dodging questions, but every question asked to the Prime Minister, he refers to the Leader of the Opposition's policies. This is not Leader of the Opposition policies, it's Prime Minister's question. And the whole...
Farage is not just positioning himself as the immigration candidate. He is presenting himself as the only adult in the room willing to name every failure this government is accumulating at breathtaking speed. Immigration is the door, but the house behind it contains every other grievance that Labour promised to fix and hasn't.
No, it was just a demonstration of anger on behalf of tens of millions of British voters. What it'll mean is more people will vote for us, hopefully, on May the 7th, as a demonstration of their anger with this Prime Minister.
The May elections are now sitting on the horizon like a storm front that has been building for months. Reform UK's strategy leading into those elections has been sharpened by events like this, PMQs. Every time Starmer deflects, Farage benefits. Every time a government minister embarrasses the Prime Minister, Reform UK's donation page sees another spike. Every time a boat lands on the Kent coast and the government responds with a press statement rather than action, thousands of people who voted Labour in the last election quietly ask themselves whether they made the right choice. The walkout is a recruitment poster for every one of those voters.
Announced this week to transform the Crucible Theatre and keep the World Snooker Championship at the heart of Sheffield.
British political history is full of moments where the establishment dramatically underestimated an insurgent force. They laughed at UKIP until it forced a referendum that reshaped the entire country. They dismissed the SNP until it swept Scotland clean. They called Jeremy Corbyn unelectable until he nearly won. Keir Starmer, standing at that dispatch box laughing at the empty Reform benches, might one day be remembered as the moment he decided to mock a movement rather than take it seriously. Movements don't forget being mocked, they fuel themselves on it.
Well, I think the Prime Minister's got to start answering the questions, otherwise the whole session is completely pointless.
The walkout wasn't just about immigration. It was Reform UK flipping the table and throwing down the gauntlet to the establishment. Farage walked out, 2 words sharper than any speech, leaving Starmer laughing at empty chairs, thinking he's won. One man walked out looking like a leader, the other stayed behind, smugly unaware that his political empire was crumbling beneath him. The ground is shifting, and no amount of smirking from Starmer will stop the inevitable collapse of his grip on power. This is just the beginning. Will Starmer's smugness be his undoing, or is this just the opening act in the battle for Britain's future?